This isn't any regular heat. This is nuclear heat. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. Bringing you the latest from the Square Circle on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Here is your host, Jake Bakovic.
Great time to be live with you here on 93.7 The Ticket and talking some wrestling. I am Jake Bachman alongside Augie Pena. This is Nuclear Heat. We do a weekly WWE Week in Review podcast, and sometimes we're going to go live. And when we do, we jump at the opportunity. So we're doing it now, right now from 9 to 10. So join us for the next hour. Have some fun as we lead up to Elimination Chamber on our road to WrestleMania, which will be April 6th. And April 7th. It looks like one of the best buildups we've had in years. So if you haven't joined us before and you do like wrestling, we encourage you to check out every week, but also just let you know the rundown. We go through the SmackDown review, we go through the Raw review, and then we will have a preview of Elimination Chamber. Of course, there is one more SmackDown. It was already pre-taped, so the folks in Salt Lake City actually got 2 episodes, which is good. I won't do any spoilers there, but we do know a little bit of the card, so we can jump into that. Augie, how you feeling about this week in wrestling? It's a good week to have a show, I think.
Yeah, it was very exciting. You know, a lot of great things happening. The Great One, once again,
that's right,
gave us an appearance on SmackDown, and I thought, these were 2 of the stronger SmackDown and Raws. The Elimination Chamber qualifying matches, just kind of everything going around. Just a lot of exciting news, a lot of exciting times. Just a great time for wrestling.
Yeah, it is. In these shows are helped out as opposed to the middle of October or something where you've got these Elimination Chamber qualifying matches, of which, of course, if you win the Elimination Chamber, you can jump into WrestleMania and be part of a main event. There's too many main events at WrestleMania, yeah. So I don't think the Rollins belt will necessarily be the main event, but it might be for night one. But in any case, it just puts a lot more on these matches and it makes them feel more important for the most part, most of these matches. And that makes these SmackDowns and Raws considerably better than they usually are. Once again, this is all leading towards an Elimination Chamber, which will be Saturday from Perth, Australia, which means about 4:30 locally here in Lincoln, Nebraska, 4:30 a.m. Yeah. Maybe 4 o'clock. You waking up early for that one? Or are you going to have to catch it once it's over?
No, I'll have to catch it like 3-4 hours later after I wake up because I'm a diehard wrestling fan, but I am not waking up at 4:30 a.m. to watch one of these. Yeah, unfortunately,
it's the time difference is a little bit going to be strange there. So you're going to have to, if you're a wrestling fan, stay off maybe Twitter early in the morning before you can get to it. But in any case, it will be fun. Let's start off with the SmackDown. It was live from Salt Lake City, and it was promised on the card that The Rock and Roman Reigns would appear. So obviously that drew a lot of eyes onto this SmackDown. They also promised 4 Elimination Chamber qualifying matches between the men's and the women's, and that also is going to draw you to this evening in SmackDown. The Salt Lake City part is important later because The Rock absolutely goes in on the people of Salt Lake City, but we'll get to that here in a bit. They kicked off with the Elimination Chamber qualifying match between KO, Kevin Owens, and Dirty Dom. A solid match with several near falls. Ends up with R-Truth appearing and Dirty Dom saying, if you want to be in Judgment Day, help me get a chair. And then R-Truth goes and gets a chair, ends up sitting on it, distracting Dirty Dom. KO hits up a pop-up powerbomb, to beat Dirty Dom, and KO joins Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, RKO, and Bobby Lashley as qualifiers for the Elimination Chamber. Interesting here, I thought, KO's got his own thing. He's always going to be a reputable, and you're going to believe him to be in with those other names. I thought a chance for WWE to do something kind of interesting, which I would like them to do. They stack these Elimination Chambers with stars. I always like a little bit of a wild card. I thought Dirty Dom would have been a great wild card for this year's event because, as our show states, nuclear heat, a wrestling term, yep. He's had nuclear heat. I mean, he still gets booed out of the building despite being aligned with one of the more popular performers in the WWE. So I was a little bit disappointed, not surprised, but disappointed that they went with KO here.
No, and I 100% agree with you. KO, I love him. Great wrestler, great storyteller, great everything, hard worker. But yeah, Dirty Dom, is anytime he tries to speak still, he gets booed out of the building. It's fun to have him, and it would have been a great opportunity for him because he's still so young. I do love though the R-Truth interference. That R-Truth is one of my favorites. Just everything he does. He's hilarious. He'll steal the show. The scenes he's in, the parts he's in. But I agree with you. They got to give Dirty Dom a chance here because he's like a big player, but he doesn't do anything, if that makes sense. Like he's like you said, he's with the Judgment Day. He and Rhea Ripley have this whole thing. She's dominant. Finn and Damian are dominant, and you kind of got Dominic Mysterio who's not doing anything. And if anyone is going to take a pin, it's either him or JD McDonough, and that doesn't really make sense, especially with like his name, and he's not bad in the ring. He's young, and he's going to be one of their future superstars.
Yeah, and I also like. I mean, if you, because I have a friend who watches just the Royal Rumble and just WrestleMania, and I just think for like the people that are there from week to week, I think you could pay off a little bit more on your stories.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, and we'll get to this, that LA Knight will ultimately win the Elimination Chamber. I think he'd be a great pick because it tells the story of the year that the LA Knight movement. Dirty Dom in the same way, yes, as a heel, so not so much. But I mean, again, he's had nuclear heat more so than we've seen in years from almost any performer. So I think if you bring that to WrestleMania, you tell that story, it pays off the week to week fans. But unfortunately, usually WWE wants to pay off a little bit more, get the big names in the match rather than help out the week to week fans in their storytelling. But in any case, a lot of people just hate Dirty Dom in general, so maybe I'm the only one complaining here. Backstage, we had Drew McIntyre and LA Knight engage in a little bit of a back and forth, sets up the matchup for this week's SmackDown. Probably not too much long-term storytelling there. That's just a little brouhaha, I think, to get you ready for Elimination Chamber on Saturday.
Yep. Nope. I agree with you. I think it'll be a great match though, because I'm still on the LA Knight train, even though they haven't been using him that great. And Drew McIntyre is good. So yeah, a one match before, everything happens, and we'll see what happens.
I could also see an AJ Styles interruption causing LA Knight. I think that might be ultimately what they do with LA Knight at WrestleMania. We move on SmackDown to another elimination qualifier, this time on the women's side between Zelina Vega and Tiffany Stratton. Legado del Fantasma, including Elektra Lopez, the newest member of Legado del Fantasma, in the front row, bothering Zelina Vega. Vega eventually throws Lopez out onto the floor. LWO arrives to kind of counter Legado del Fantasma. All of this kind of distracts Vega. Tiffany Stratton gets the win with the prettiest moonsault ever, which is a great name, I think. Tiffany Stratton kind of rather new on the scene. Is it Tiffy time at Elimination Chamber?
No, unfortunately. It was good for her to get there. You got to put some young blood in there, but I unfortunately think she'll probably be one of the first ones to take a pin, in the Elimination Chamber. But, good for her to get there. And this one was a little weird because, as we've talked about it, Zelina Vega just is kind of there, and then they always keep putting her in kind of these important matches. Whoever's facing her is going to win because they never push her. They never give her that win. Because Tiffany's been on the roster Royal Rumble, right? That was pretty much her debut. So she's a month. So good for her to get this far. But I do like that name too, the prettiest moonsault ever. And that's pretty nice.
I think it's good. She's kind of got the annoying pretty girl character kind of rolling with her into WWE, the main roster anyway. Interesting that they go with her, in this matchup with all the other kind of proven stars at the Elimination Chamber and not Jade Cargill, who I think is of the newcomers, the bigger star, and the higher upside, but still a favor for Stratton to put her in this match. She definitely gets kind of the rub. And to me, we were talking about this a couple of their pay-per-views ago, is, they try to do that at certain times, and sometimes it feels forced. It doesn't feel too forced. I think Stratton, at least, she can go. She's got the look. I'm ready to embrace her as new competition in this women's division. Yeah, and they've actually been giving her matches on SmackDown. They haven't been great matches, but she's won, I think, every match or every SmackDown since Royal Rumble. She's had a match. Whereas Jade Cargill, I think, they're still kind of keeping her away, and not giving us, her in the ring just yet on there. And another thing, we kind of talked about this before with Jade Cargill. You can't have her take a pin just yet. She is an up and comer. She's somebody they really value as, someone that can elevate that women's division. So, with Tiffany Stratton, like you said, great rub for her. She'll probably be one of the first eliminated, but, good for her to get on. Yeah, I promised before the show we wouldn't catch up and talk 15 minutes on Tiffany Stratton, and here we go, off and running. But so we better move on. But interesting, and good move for her for the win there. Like you said, though, Zelina Vega, LWO, this Legado del Fantasma thing, I think it's destined for the SmackDown before WrestleMania, not quite making the WrestleMania card. But that's kind of interesting too, and we'll see what happens there. They kind of paid off a little bit that on Monday as well. From there, we had a promo. In the back, is pre-recorded. Io Sky delivering a message to Bayley. They have their WrestleMania match set up. It confirms that her and the Kabuki Warriors are keeping the Damage Control name, which is kind of interesting because without Io Sky, they already have a name, the Kabuki Warriors. So I'm kind of interested in that. And it kind of, gives a little bit more intrigue. They didn't do too much. Again, just a quick promo here. But I am wildly entertained by this whole thing. Dakota Kai kind of jumping in and helping Bayley. We'll see if that gets situated before WrestleMania. Could still see Kai flip on Bayley and go back to Damage Control. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I thought it's good. It is very confusing because Bayley did start Damage Control, so that is technically hers. And Dakota Kai, for everything, she's still not great on the mic. It's very hard, but this is interesting. Who is she going to be with? She's saying she's with Bayley, but as lifelong WWE fans, we know what can happen. That turn could come at any moment there. But I think this is good. It'll go from there. And poor Kabuki Warriors. I mean, what are they doing? Just they're the women's tag team champions, and they really aren't doing much. We talked about it, unfortunately, probably destined for that Friday before SmackDown.
Yeah.
Defending. They won't make it to WrestleMania there either. So
yeah, well, they'll still probably be there for some interference in the match, but yeah, they probably won't get their own match. This is Nuclear Heat, by the way, here on 93.7 The Ticket, our weekly review of WWE. We're running through SmackDown from Salt Lake City last Friday. We'll get into Raw and get a little bit of a preview for you here for Elimination Chamber. As we move on throughout the show, Authors of Pain, who also further confusing because they're another tag team within a stable, which again is the Kabuki Warriors problem with Damage Control. Authors of Pain, the tag team within the stable of Final Testament, take on Javier Bernal and Bo Davis from NXT. Not that Bo Davis, if Nebraska football fans remember, but anyways, they squash the NXT guys who are clearly there just for that. Kind of a reminder of what Authors of Pain can do. Still doesn't do anything for me as far as Final Testament against Bobby Lashley and his group. It's again, unfortunately, another one probably is going to be situated before WrestleMania. Yeah,
and I really like the Authorities of Pain, AOP or whatever they go by there. They're huge. Before they got released, they're another super that tag team that was released like 4 times, and now they're back again. But their leader's Killian Cross, and I mean, when was the last time Killian Cross won a match? They're just kind of bunched together there. And this squash, I mean, is supposed to make them look strong, but they haven't been given any direction. And that's the issue I have with it. If you're going to, NXT, which is supposed to be, the developmental for, the main roster. I mean, if you're going to have them squash some of that talent, you got to do something with it. And we haven't seen anything from these guys.
Yeah, I'm glad they're back. I feel like they could have been better utilized as they are being brought back in. Again, the Final Testament's just a very strange group, again, of what you're saying. Karrion Kross, who never pays off on his threats. An old guy, 2 giant guys that wear different uniforms than everybody else in the group. It's just... It's not the way I would have brought him back. I really liked them actually as for very temporarily with Seth Rollins. Remember when Seth Rollins was a bad guy and part of kind of the Triple H regime there, and they were kind of his muscle for a minute. They didn't go long enough with that either, I thought, but ultimately that was one of my best versions of Seth Rollins. We move on to another elimination qualifier match here between The Miz and Logan Paul. This was a rematch from SummerSlam from a few years back. Of course, these guys initially, when Logan Paul came in, was a tag team with Miz. This was actually Logan Paul's first free match, is what you call it in WWE when they do it on television, not on premium live events. And so, you feel more and more like Logan Paul is a wrestler and not a celebrity guest. And I couldn't be any more impressed with him. I'm not a big YouTuber. I don't really honestly know all of why he got famous. Something about a video in a forest or something. But But in any case, he is so good, not just at acting, at wrestling, like in ring. The only thing that I did not like about this is they continued the brass knuckles deal, which he got from one of his friends in the crowd. Ultimately, the Miz decides not to use it, but they've already told the story, and there's a very short story on Logan Paul so far that he's got metal in his right arm, and so he's got the knockout punch. So why does he need the brass knuckles? It doesn't really make sense, but it's still the right decision here to get Logan Paul in the qualifier match.
Yeah, and this is interesting because, with them getting him in the qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber, I agree with you, by the way. He is a phenomenal wrestler. He's a great athlete that you can tell really works at it, really cares. Whereas other short-term celebrities, they're kind of like, match or two. He's been around now, 2-3 years? And I mean, he's the United States champion, which I don't think a lot of people know unless, you're watching it all the time. So to put him in this Elimination Chamber to potentially main event, we're going to throw that around loosely because, as you mentioned, there's like 15 main events for WrestleMania. Right. Him being a potential challenge to Seth Rollins, I kind of like that. That'd be cool. United States champ versus world heavyweight champ. I think that'd be great. That'd be money because, like you said, Logan Paul, I mean, he's got a podcast, which I've never listened to. So, I don't know what he talks about or anything there. So
probably Prime is what I can tell.
Probably Prime. I know he has a lot of big celebrities come on there too, and athletes and whatnot. But, can you just imagine if he's one of the main eventers for WrestleMania? Yeah. They're going to get so many eyes on it. So great decision there. The Miz, once again, you don't know what he's going to do because this is kind of like a babyface turn here, right?
Yeah, which isn't his best, I don't think. No. He's a great heel.
I know he's like a family man. He's got his TV show. They promote that. But yeah, I agree with you. He's at best when he's that arrogant heel that just thinks he's, can do anything, even though he always, loses matches. I think he goes like a full year without a win. But yeah, no, great decision for Logan Paul. I thought it was fun to see him, not on a premium live event. What they call it, and kind of just on a regular episode there.
Yeah. I think that he does feel like he could win Elimination Chamber, but he's also he's kind of promoted like he's going to be a 2-belt type of champ, which would be cool. But they cannot bury that Rollins championship anymore. If the United States champ goes in and beats the heavyweight champ, they might as well just throw that away with the 24/7 championship, which got thrown away.
But can you just imagine though if Logan Paul was your world heavyweight champ? I mean, I think that'd bring a bunch of eyes. That'd be great for the WWE. But I agree with you. It got taken away from technically a celebrity. Everything Rollins did. I don't know. It's like a double-edged sword. It'd be great, but not. I mean, he'd be a 2-time champ, but then the United States championship would have no value because that'd be his second champ. The champion, the step sibling of the championships and all that stuff. So. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. This is the fun part about it is what is the WWE going to do? Are they going to make us mad? Are they going to impress us? Or are they going to disappoint us,
Well, and we talked about it too off air that I think a very likely outcome of all of this is Senor Money in the Bank cashes in on Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. It would be, kind of poetic justice for what he did years ago with Lesnar and Roman Reigns. So regardless of who the opponent is there, I think we could see Priest walking out of WrestleMania as that champion. But we'll have to wait and see. Another Elimination Chamber qualifier match with Naomi and Alba Fire. They have not built up Alba Fire enough for really anybody to believe that she had a chance in this thing. Naomi does get the win. She's back from TNA. New music, looks good, taps out Alba Fire. But I would say this was one of the weaker matches of the night, if only because there wasn't much belief in Alba Fire. By the way, and we haven't mentioned also the 2K ratings that they're showing. I really like that. Kind of help promote their video game and give you an idea of where people are standing in the organization. But in a matchup like this, it's like it kind of tips the hand to you who's going to win, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And it was fun. I thought that was funny as well to see something like that. And Naomi is so good in the ring. She has all the potential in the world. She's a former champ coming back to, one of the biggest standing ovations. But yeah, this Alba Fire, she gets TV screen time. She gets a match against a former champion, Naomi, and you go from there. And I just want to kind of plug this in. We don't have to talk about it, but 2K will never have anything on the Raw versus SmackDown games that were on in the early 2000s. Oh, yeah. I mean, oh man, those were great.
Oh, those were so good. I mean, there's so many great video games of the past, but yeah, 2K still got some catching up to do. As we go to the final segment here on our SmackDown review, live from Salt Lake City last Friday, Roman Reigns appears along with the rest of the bloodline, eventually calling upon his cousin, The Rock, to join them. The Rock ultimately, after mocking Salt Lake City, the way that The Rock can, he's such a good promo. It's so good to have heel Rock back in his very expensive vest that he was wearing here. Kind of the Hollywood Rock character, maybe returning. The Rock joins the bloodline. That's what this whole promo was kind of set up. And the bloodline feels stronger than ever. Now, I have seen conspiracy theories on this segment because The Rock at one time was saying that he will make sure Cody loses at WrestleMania. Actually, from a certain camera angle, is pointing at Roman when he says, "I make sure you will lose at WrestleMania." He also puts an L instead of one finger up as he joins the bloodline. So maybe even those things intertwining. But you catching on to any of these conspiracy theories, or you think The Rock is with the bloodline and will be through WrestleMania?
No, I'm 100% with these, conspiracy theories here. I when I saw the L, I'm like, what does that mean? What is he saying there? It's a lot of fun. Having Hollywood Rock is the greatest thing when he just insults the fans, calls them every name in the book, does all of that stuff. I just love it. The Rock is my favorite of all time. So having him back kind of full time on SmackDown and for this is great. It'll be fun because we haven't really mentioned it, but they pretty much announced that it's going to be The Rock versus Roman, or the Rock and Roman tag team versus Cody and Seth night one of WrestleMania. So, however that match comes out, you never know. You never know, is The Rock going to get mad? Is The Rock, going to do this or that? It's all fun. And then when they had their Las Vegas, that like WrestleMania kick, he put up the what do you call it? Oh my gosh, the chart of like the family,
the family tree basically,
and it had like the something The Rock, and for Roman Reigns, it literally just said his name. Like there was nothing there. Like no acknowledgement, no tribal chief, no champion, just The Rock or Roman Reigns, and I thought that was very interesting. That kind of put some, some conspiracies in my head to be there. But man, I would love for him to kind of just swerve it, go there, help Cody win the championship, because that's where they're going with it. But have a little semi feud there. I think that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see, regardless of how they do this, is The Rock, who is now a chairman of the TKO board, is he a character? Is he going to be sticking around? Are we going to get him for Backlash, which will be in France this year? I mean, is this story going to last past WrestleMania, or does it, you kind of take his TV time away, shows up a few times a year and then shows up for WrestleMania matches? I wouldn't mind that either. Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. And I did hear the rumor that part of his contract was he's got to wrestle so many matches now that he's a chairman to kind of promote it, bring it up. A little bit behind the scenes research we do here for everything for all you guys. So I think that'd be interesting because, as you mentioned, what if Roman somehow retains, but The Rock tried to interfere and help Cody? You can start that feud. I mean, I wouldn't mind a year-long feud, that way, or even a SummerSlam. They have all the possibilities in the world, man. It's going to be fun. Well, and it is. I mean, especially if you think about Roman dropping the belt, it's like, well, what do you do? Anything feels lesser than this long title run, unless it's Rock against Roman. So, I mean, that would be a perfect pivoting point, and it would make sense for The Rock maybe to turn on Roman. We will see. That'll wrap it up for a SmackDown review here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket. We've got the Raw review coming up next. A good match card. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. Also the IC title between Jey Uso and Gunther. We will preview Elimination Chamber as well. That's all coming up next year on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bakoven on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
We are back here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket. Thanks for joining us live here. We usually do a little bit of a podcast, but we had a chance to jump on live. We said, yeah, we'll do it. We stay up for Raw, so we can stay up for Nuclear Heat. And we are now going to do a bit of a Raw review from last night. It's, again, SmackDown was fantastic with The Rock and Roman Reigns promo kind of being the biggest part of that. But a lot of these matches on both SmackDown and Raw interesting because they were Elimination Chamber qualifying matches. So let's jump right into it. The match card for Raw, particularly of importance to me, Cody Rhodes against Drew McIntyre, which they opened the show with, and the IC title matchup between Jey Uso and Gunther. And if you watched it, they both ended in a similar fashion. So interesting for those to tie it together. We open up with Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. Once again, the 2K rating showing Rhodes a bit of an of a I think he was like 95 or something like that, and McIntyre's 89 as far as the rankings go. So a bit of an advantage there. But it was really interesting when they put this match out there, because it's like, who's going to take the loss? I mean, McIntyre has been on quite a winning streak. Rhodes hasn't lost since WrestleMania. He hasn't lost all year. They just won't pin him. So it was very interesting to see who would take this loss, and maybe somewhat predictable that ultimately it would be interference that plays into it. Ultimately, Jimmy Uso does interfere, distracts the official, allows Solo Sikoa to hit Rhodes with his thumb, with a Samoan spike is what it's called, but it's obviously the spike thumb there. And it set up McIntyre for the Claymore to get the win and the pin on Cody Rhodes. It was the same way Rhodes lost to Reigns at WrestleMania. Once again, his second loss, and they're not shy in saying so. Sometimes you can read between the lines, but when WWE's commentary is saying so, it's part of the story. What do you think about this? What does this do for the players involved in here? Does this give anybody more heat? Does this add anything to anybody, you think?
I can see it being really good for Cody Rhodes, because it's giving him that sympathy. Everybody wants him to win, and he keeps getting screwed over by the bloodline, things like that. So I think it's great for him. Good for McIntyre, because he's been flirting with like that heel, good guy, kind of funny guy. And I think now, he accepted the bloodline's interference and took the win. So, I think that kind of pushes him towards a heel. So that's kind of good for wherever he's going in WrestleMania. And we talked about it. I can't stand the whole Solo Sikoa coming out in a black hoodie, us not showing his face, and things like that. So that's kind of annoying, but I thought it was good, all around. And I say that, but I still didn't really like it all that much. I would have rather something, I don't know how, but another, interference, or maybe, like a double count out, something like that. But to give Cody a loss, I think they're just going for that whole, underdog, rally behind, type of thing there. So that's where I think they went with it.
Well, it's interesting too, because McIntyre, like you said, he kind of walks the line, not really, not a good guy anymore, but not necessarily, he'll claim he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, accepting the help from the bloodline to get the win. He would later stay in a promo. He's kind of playing the long-term battle, but still doesn't like the bloodline. So it's kind of interesting there. And I think it does continue to push him in a direction that I do think he's going to win Elimination Chamber. We'll get to our predictions here in a little bit, but they've been heating up him really well. And this is about as big a win as you can get in the WWE right now, maybe outside of Reigns, obviously, and Rock. Maybe Gunther, but no, Rhodes is probably over Gunther right now. So it was a huge win for McIntyre, and obviously big story there. We move on there from another Elimination Chamber qualifier match. This one, a battle royale, maybe my favorite matches in WWE. You get so many different people involved here. And what was really impressive about this, again, as opposed to when the Women's Revolution started and they would try to throw these and you have to throw 6 NXT girls in and maybe a few legends in, is that this was filled with wrestlers that you kind of know and fill out the women's roster. So Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, returning Raquel Rodriguez, Xia Li, Valhalla, Tegan Knox, Natalia, Indy Hartwell, Candice LeRae, Maxine Dupree, Ivy Nile, Electra Lopez, B-Fab, Katana Chance, Mishin, Zelina Vega, Chelsea Green, Isla Dawn, and Alba Fire, all participating in the match. Ultimately led to Rodriguez overcoming Baszler and Stark, who could be one of the hotter tag teams, at least in the women's division. Still, heels. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to face the Kabuki Warriors, but that could be some twist we kind of see coming out of this. But ultimately, Rodriguez dumps both of them out of the ring to apparently win. Chelsea Green sneaks up behind, and I was happy for half a second until she gets thrown over. This was interesting. Rodriguez obviously is believable. She's one of the bigger women, one of the more powerful looking women on the roster. And she has a reason, I suppose. She's kind of had that bit of a feud before with the women's champion. And so I think it's, and then the other thing is, whenever you have a battle royale, oftentimes you get like an underdog win or a surprise win. Sometimes it's good just to have what would happen in real life is the Giant's going to win because it's hard to throw the Giant over the ring. And so I thought this was very entertaining. Like I said, some of my favorite type of matches, and an outcome that makes sense both in booking and in just, like I said, reasoning.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I love this. It's a good chance to get all of these women out on here, for a chance at the Elimination Chamber for the women's title. And I thought Rodriguez was the right choice, like you said, because what they want to do is that Elimination Chamber for the women, they want to stack it. They want to make whoever's going to win it, earn it, and make it believable, because Rhea Ripley, she's kind of an unstoppable force right now, outside of Nia Jax, who for some reason has her number. But yeah, Rodriguez is like 6'1". I don't know how tall, if she's really that tall, but she's like, she's believable. She's built a big time superstar there. And for her to get that win was huge. And like I said, stacking that Elimination Chamber for whoever gets the win is huge, because you really got to build up whoever is going to win that thing. Because they got to be able to challenge Rhea. And man, I was with you. I wanted Chelsea Green to kind of win that. I was excited. I was like, can she do it? Because that would have been hilarious, to have, the likes of like Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan, all them in the Elimination Chamber, and then Chelsea Green. That would have been fun. That would have been fun to kind of watch her run around and scream, do her signature stuff there. So I thought that would have been.
Well, and we said it earlier, with Dirty Dom, just a wild card in there that you don't necessarily isn't too believable, but can give you some pops and some entertaining. And she is as entertaining with the acting as I think you've got going in the women's division right now. So I would have liked it. Interested to see what they do. They got to do something for her at WrestleMania, because she's such an entertaining character. We move on from that. R-Truth gets an in-depth interview about his breakup with the Judgment Day. Truth even said in his meeting with the Judgment Day, he said the first meeting, it was special, like the first time John Cena tried on jean shorts. So R-Truth always paying tribute to his idol, John Cena, who is I believe a little bit younger than him.
Like 10 years younger than R-Truth.
So I mean, it's all, of course, Truth, a very comedic character. I thought they did kind of very well here. This was like maybe like one of those shoots that you'd had in like Mari. With, it kind of sets you up for a relationship troubles. So I thought it was kind of funny. And it sets up for the match of R-Truth, The Miz, and DIY, who Truth thinks is DX, against Judgment Day. So just, again, great comedic stuff here. Hot tag to Truth ignited the crowd in this match. He had some moments there. Ultimately, Damian Priest gets the best of him. I will say this, and I'm a big Damian Priest fan, and some of this is the comedic stuff kind of going in this, so it can be hard at times. But some of his selling is really tough with how big he is and how big of a character he's supposed to be, imposing and all that. Like when he dives into the ring corner and then just kind of starts shaking his head, you're just like, he needs to work on that a little bit. But that's my only complaint from a very entertaining match back and forth, that the Judgment Day ultimately wins here. My question, I guess, for you is Truth and Miz against Judgment Day at WrestleMania?
I think so. I think we talked about that like a couple of weeks ago, that this is probably the direction they're going in. And I'm going to tell you this. I know Truth isn't a big time player, but they essentially have a Sami Zayn from last year with the Bloodline. It's like a lesser version of it, because it's, the Judgment Day, who are supposed to run the place, but they lost so many times. But yeah, no, I'm gonna love to see the Miz and R-Truth versus the Judgment Day, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I can see that being like the upset of WrestleMania is that happening, because you watch R-Truth, he is a phenomenal performer, he's a phenomenal wrestler. The guy's like 53 years old or something like that, and he's more athletic than the both of us combined. With me, he's more than me.
You're right.
And things like that. But no, it's going to be a lot of fun. But they need to build up. They need to build up the Judgment Day a little bit more, because they're kind of, you forget that Finn and Damian are the world heavyweight champs, because they just don't do much. Or tag team champs. They don't do much with it. So I think you got to build that up a little bit more, but it's gonna be one heck of a match.
Well, I think, again, as we mentioned earlier, if Priest does cash in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, it could be a similar thing that they did with Rollins, where Rollins lost to Orton that year, so you kind of forget about him. He's already kind of had his WrestleMania and he's down. So if they have this upset take place at WrestleMania again, kind of leading you to believe, well, Damian Priest didn't have a good WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Snap, there he goes, and maybe gets the turns it in the Money in the Bank and gets the win.
Yeah, and the fun thing is, they haven't teased it as much, but earlier this year they were going with who was the leader of the Judgment Day, right?
That's right.
Okay, so if Damian Priest were to get the world championship, he and Rhea would then, really be like,
Colliding
well,
heads
we're
again,
both
yeah.
world champs. Who's the leader here? So man, it could dream scenarios, right? It can be so many great stories there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good creative stuff around the corner, I think, for WrestleMania and WWE. We go then to Becky Lynch Elimination Chamber promo. She is interrupted ultimately by Liv Morgan. Becky Lynch is basically saying it's going to happen. It's going to be her and Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. Liv Morgan says it's more personal to her, so this is part of her comeback story. It's not just a WrestleMania story. Raquel Rodriguez, Naomi, and Tiffany Stratton, as well as Bianca Belair, all interrupt. This happens a lot. This is a typical promo before an Elimination Chamber or a Money in the Bank or tables, ladders, and chairs match where all the competitors interrupt each other. Brawl broke out eventually. Very kind of weird transitioning. I think the last line was supposed to be, Bianca Belair telling Stratton, "You don't even go here." And then there's like this pause, and then Morgan was just like, "Yeah, you don't go here." And then for some reason they started fighting. Like I think they didn't time that very well.
Yeah.
So I noticed that. And then just a very interesting booking strategy to ultimately have Nia Jax come out and squash everyone that's going to be involved in the Elimination Chamber. The story being told there is that all these women were thinking, we're going to challenge Rhea Ripley, and that like the fact that she's going to be a Nia Jax is a foregone conclusion. So you build up Nia Jax while at the same time kind of belittling everybody before the Elimination Chamber. A little bit of a mistake there, I think, from WWE.
And I agree. And my thoughts on Nia Jax, and the people listening probably know my thoughts on Nia Jax. I mentioned it earlier. I don't know what it is. They're building Nia Jax to be something. I'm going to tell you, if it's Nia Jax versus Rhea Ripley for the women's heavyweight championship at WrestleMania, I will riot. I will do my own little protest, my own little riot. That is not something I want to see. And not to take away from Nia Jax, I don't think she's great. She's big, believable, built like that, but I just don't see it. And she squashes everybody. This is like the third time she squashed Rhea. It wasn't a match, but they had a confrontation, and she essentially sat on her. Did her from the top rope. About crushed her there and everything. And it's like, what are they doing? And I know it's more than likely they're just building her up. So hopefully, whoever else is going to win, I'm banking on that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're the ones that eliminated Nia Jax. They can do it. They can do it. But man, you're right. They kind of made everyone else look kind of weak there for a second.
Yeah. I don't know if that was the greatest idea, but again, it gives Nia Jax a little bit of something. I agree with you. It'd be a huge upset if Jax somehow beats Ripley and then goes into WrestleMania as the champ. I just don't see it. Chad Gable against Ivar is the next match. Really good stuff throughout Raw here. It's a 3-hour show. I thought it went pretty quickly, including these two guys who are very different sizes, but both of them can go. The story around it, probably leaving a little bit to be desired. Ultimately, Gable is trying to fight for his team, Alpha Academy, who's all been defeated by Ivar. Okay. This is mid card feud stuff here for sure. But it was a good match, and Gable ultimately transitioned from a pinfall that looked like he was going to have into an ankle lock. You want Ivar that big tapping out? I don't know if I love it, but it's not like Ivar has much to lose. But I think he lost a little bit there.
Yeah, and I thought about this, and I feel bad for Ivar because he is showing he can be a single star, but he just doesn't have it, I think, because
his promos aren't.
They're not great. And
great.
it's the fact that he's part of the Viking War,
He's a Viking. Yeah.
And they haven't done anything. We talked about they were like the jobbers, if they're in a match, they're losing it. And Chad Gable had this incredible run earlier, this year. So I thought, again, it was a good match. It was a really good match. Just Chad Gable's lost steam, and Ivar is just that I'm sorry, but he's just that jobber. He's doing his best. He's doing his work, and I just don't see him getting over. That's the problem.
And he'd almost be better without Valhalla.
Yeah.
The character is fine, but the over and over losses and never really having any sort of upside moments really is hurting that group. I guess they're waiting for the other Viking Raid to return, Eric.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to be quite like The Rock returning.
No, no, not at all.
It's tough. It's tough to be a Viking, I
Yep.
think, in modern day and really get too much of a push. Then we move on to the Intercontinental Championship as we are reviewing Raw here on Nuclear Heat, our weekly WWE review show here on 93.7 The Ticket. Hard-hitting match between Gunther and Jey Uso. Feud. I mean, Jey is wildly over, so I don't want to sound like a hater here. But a few things I don't like about Jey still is the spit slap. I think that's a very heelish move, especially post-COVID.
Yeah.
It's very, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And very much, from his heel days. So I guess you can bring it over. The other thing is they've kind of given him the spear, and he's just not the body for it. He's not big enough. And he's not explosive enough that spear doesn't look as punishing, obviously, when you think about a Roman Reigns or a Goldberg famously. And so he did like 5 of them. It kind of set up for it looked like, he was going to get the win, finally dethrone Gunther, and ultimately have more interference. This time, Jey Uso underneath a black or a hood again, hitting the ring bell just as the pin was about to take place. Interestingly enough, they had Jey kind of recover from it, and then have another chance at a pin at Gunther before Gunther does get the win. Post-match beatdown, Jey Uso getting beat down by Jimmy, and sets up a very obvious and exciting WrestleMania match, I think, between the Uso brothers there.
Yeah, and I agree. And I thought this was a good match. I thought Jey really, aside from those spears that weren't amazing, I thought he did put on a good show. And I mean, to the WWE's credit, you knew the interference was probably coming, but he about cleanly pinned Gunther. It about happened there. But once again, the whole black hood thing, the ringing the bell, you kind of saw that coming. But I am excited to see these two brothers go at it at WrestleMania because, like you said, Jey is hot. Jimmy is not. So, you'd think Jey would come out winning that one, but, you want to see them going at it. That's the fun part.
Yeah, they got to do something for Jimmy. He's been just taking pins and being kind of the silly guy. He is not one of the two Usos since the split, but this will give him some heat. Let's take a quick break here, and then we'll wrap up things on Nuclear Heat with our preview of Elimination Chamber, which is this Saturday. We'll be right back here on 93.7 The Ticket.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bakoven, on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Once again, thanks for joining us here on 93.7 The Ticket. This is Nuclear Heat, our wrestling review show for the week. Usually we do it on a podcast. You can find it on our YouTube page. But when there's a chance for a live opportunity, we'd like to jump in and take it. So that's what we did today. I am Jake Bakoven, your host of Nuclear Heat, with my tag team partner, Augie Pena, Nuclear Heat contributor. And we welcome you to jump in and give us your thoughts as well at any time. As Todd did here. Todd off YouTube says, I think Triple H needs to resign as WWE head of creative. I think he knew about Vince McMahon's sexual abuse scandal and did nothing about it. Sorry, that's what I think. We don't have to be sorry. It is definitely, there. I think there's a lot of people wondering, what was known. We don't want to comment too much on that because, legal matters and I don't, there's a lot still to kind of be seen what happens there, but it looks like an absolute mess and obviously the end of an era for Vince McMahon. And it's tough to say what's known and what's not known. We saw Stephanie McMahon leave the company the first time that they tried to get Vince McMahon out of the company. So I mean, and obviously Triple H being her husband, I can't say whether he should or not, or what he knew or not, but I will say this. WWE has kind of leaned in on his character once again, now calling him Paul Triple H Levesque, so a little bit of a different with, The Rock and some of the other, TKO leadership and all of that, than what was previously, with the authority and all that stuff. But I will say I guess it indicate well, at least from WWE's side, on Triple H's behalf, that they at least are continuing to use him in such a high profile spot. that maybe he will be able to clear this trouble. Once again, whether that's good or not, I'll leave that up to you to decide, or for your thoughts. But that's kind of interesting. Thanks to Todd for chiming in there. And obviously, that horrible allegations and court orders is the backdrop of such good wrestling that's going on right now in storylines in WrestleMania season. But that's there, and unfortunately, it's not going to go away. I think it was I can't remember if it was Netflix, who, by the way, was in the building last night for Raw, and is going to take over Raw here in the year 2025. But I know there was a documentary set up for Vince McMahon that they've completely put on the table, because obviously there's a lot more to be seen before you can make a documentary to kind of be the all-encompassing in there. So that's interesting. Once again, if you have any thoughts, go ahead and chime in. 402-464-5685 is our text line, or you can comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Appreciate you if you give us a like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Once again, the SmackDown preview that we can have for Friday night, real quickly. It's already been taped. So it was taped last week at Salt Lake City. But I have not. You can, if you want to, you can go out and look for the results. I have not quite yet. But you don't expect necessarily anything too big. But they have done a good job of setting this card up for me to be interested in it. It's not just a throwaway SmackDown. Once again, LA Knight versus Drew McIntyre set up for Friday. The Street Profits, Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins against AOP, Akeem and Rezar. So I think that will be an interesting match. I don't necessarily know which way they're going to book it. I just hope I'm interested. Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate take on Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonough. Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate now, by the way, British Strong Style. You like that?
Yep, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I like that a little bit better. I do.
I do too. It kind of leans into their accents and kind of gives them a little bit more, for what it's worth, because, Pete Dunne, his character isn't much different right now than it was Butch, which is just like an angry guy that just, little guy that wants to fight.
Yep.
The Pete Dunne style is similar to what Tyler Bate, and I don't even like, I know Tyler Bate from 2 weeks ago. That's about it. When he arrived in, they call him the big strong man or little strong man or something like that. And I'm still getting used to his character. So I think it's good to give them something here. Although I don't know if it quite rolls off the tongue, but British Strong Style, going to get a warm-up shot there against Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonough. Expect them to win that. The big one I'm looking forward to for SmackDown's preview or SmackDown this Friday will be Braun Breaker's in-ring debut. Now, it might be an absolute squash match. I don't know that they have him going up against, but talk about a guy I'm also interested to see what they do at WrestleMania with Breaker.
Yep. No, I'm very excited. We've talked about this a lot. We're both very excited. We're both big fans. I think this kid, he's a kid still, has a huge future in WWE, has a look, and he's going to be the guy that's going to put the company on his back, I think, here for the next couple of years once they get him going. So.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the future. Looks like to be one of the futures of WWE. Let's take a quick break for station ID, and we'll come back with our Elimination Chamber preview card.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
Once again, this is Nuclear Heat here on 93.7 The Ticket, our weekly review of WWE wrestling. Once again, you can usually find it on our YouTube page. I'll post it to the YouTube page as well under the videos tag. But we get a chance to go live. We like to go live once in a while, not just pre-taped like this SmackDown is going to be on Friday. But let's get into the Elimination Chamber. Lots to kind of look into here. We'll start with some of the bottom of the card and work our way up. First of all, Cody Rhodes and World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins will appear on the Grayson Waller effect. What do you think they're going to work through here? Obviously, they've been telling the story of Seth Rollins being the Shield for Cody Rhodes in his upcoming battle with Roman Reigns.
I mean, if John Moxley wants to come back, that would be just phenomenal. Formerly Dean Ambrose, if they want to reunite. I mean, I thought when Seth brought that out on that Monday, I was like, oh my gosh, is he coming? Is he coming back? Because that'd be just cherry on the top of all this there. But sorry, I got distracted with that. But it's interesting to me because these guys have been feuding for the last 2 years since Cody came back. All that stuff, and now Seth has his back, all that stuff, because he wants him to finish the story. I think it's weird. We talked about it, that they're having a Grayson Waller effect on this premium live event, but I guess you got to get Cody and Seth on there.
And Grayson's from Australia, I believe.
He might be, yeah. I guess he is. So okay, that makes sense. On there, they'll probably just talk about it. Grayson will probably get hit by, a crossroads or something like that for saying something wrong. And, it's just to keep Cody and Rollins, I think, fresh, relevant in this premium live event.
One, they've done a good job too with Seth Rollins' injury of finding a way to get him TV times, finding a way to keep his belt at least in the discussion. And we'll see here. You can take a bump here and there, but so you might see that they can get heat on somebody if they need to. Although I don't know. Like you said, I think this ends up bad for Grayson Waller. Then we have our undisputed tag team championship once again between the Judgment Day's Damian Priest and Finn Balor against British Strong Style Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. To what you kind of said earlier, I think Damian Priest and Finn Balor, they've had these undisputed belts for quite some time. They lose them. They've lost them, I think, twice and regained them rather quickly. And they've done a pretty good job fighting on, whether it be Raws or SmackDown or, a premium live event here and there. But a lot of their matches has been kind of like this one where it's like, it's pretty obvious they're going to win.
Yeah.
I think British Strong Style can put on a good match. And it's not only is it obvious that they're going to win, but it would be asinine if they didn't.
Yeah.
It would be a terrible booking decision.
No, yep, I agree with you 100%. They don't have much going for the tag team champions, the titles. So, you got to get it's going to be a good match, but I think you got to get a convincing, clean win. I know that's probably not going to happen because, Damian JD, Dominic JD, they'll probably come in and interfere, but I would love if this one was a clean win by the tag team champs. Just show their dominance a little bit.
Yeah. They shouldn't need help to beat these guys. We move on to the Women's World Championship, Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax. Once again, we'll get those 2K ratings up there, and I think Rhea Ripley will have a decided advantage. Possible talk of this headlining it because of the way they've pushed Nia Jax. And people are just so interested to see a Rhea Ripley. Again, I think that's her home as well, Australia. So should be a huge crowd there. Kind of think of Zelina Vega in Puerto Rico or something like that, or Bad Bunny, the same. That could be a lot of fun. And I think they'll put on a good match. I think some near falls, obviously, for Jax, but I think Ripley's got to get a win that one, obviously, heading into WrestleMania.
Yeah, and I know I bash Nia a lot for that, but I'm very interested to see how Rhea's going to win this one because she's not going to be able to physically dominate Nia Jax. That's kind of the one thing Nia Jax has. So, I'll be watching the recorded tape of it. Because like I mentioned, I'm not waking up at 4:30 in the morning to watch this one. But when I see it, I'm very interested to see how they give Rhea that win.
The women's elimination chamber match. Let's move on to that. Becky Lynch against Bianca Belair against Liv Morgan, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, and Raquel Rodriguez. We've mentioned it throughout the broadcast. Looks like Becky Lynch is probably going to win here. Do you have? I mean, if you were going to lean another way, would it be Bianca?
I don't. You would say yes, but I do really think they're going to go with Jade Cargill with her at WrestleMania. So I would have to say it would have to be Liv Morgan. I know you're not as high on her, but I think she is kind of over with the fans. I don't think it'd be realistic, for her to beat Rhea. But if it's not Becky, I would go with Liv.
Yeah, I can see it. They've been telling a good story there. I don't know if the crowd is quite as high on Liv Morgan or ready to jump in with Liv Morgan as maybe they had before. So I don't necessarily see that happening, but it is hard. I mean, maybe you could go with Stratton to give her that big of a debut. But it's hard to see Naomi or Raquel Rodriguez in that position. So I think it would come down to those four, and Becky Lynch, the overwhelming favorite there, is going to be both our picks. Now on to the men's Royal Rumble. Drew McIntyre against Randy Orton, against Bobby Lashley, against LA Knight, against Kevin Owens, against Logan Paul, again for the right to take on Seth Rollins for his heavyweight championship.
Yeah, and I'm going with Drew McIntyre, just the way they built him up. But I'll tell you what, other than Bobby Lashley or Kevin Owens, I would not be disappointed if Randy Orton or Logan Paul, or my guy LA Knight, come out and win this one, because I think that could be interesting. Can you Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins? I know they haven't built it, but I mean, that's electric there too. You know, those are two great guys, but I do ultimately think it'll be Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the question about what do you do with everybody else. Once again, I think LA Knight, maybe is headed. Maybe they've kind of looked the other way on that AJ Styles feud. I could see that here. I would have more faith in him. I mean, he's on Raw, he's on SmackDown, and Rollins is on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're going to have that crossover. Sometimes they'll do, sometimes they won't. I think that's the story. I think LA Knight deserves that. If you're not going to give him, eventually, despite all the movement he had and all that, he's a little bit overshadowed by The Rock and Cody and fairly. But it was kind of the year of the LA Knight movement, so they got to find something. I don't know if an AJ Styles, matchup is enough. So I would love to see LA Knight here. I agree with you. I think Drew McIntyre is the winner, but I'd keep an eye on LA Knight.
I think just from the hearings and everything, LA Knight, Logan Paul, we could get a feud going there if they don't win this. There you go. You got LA Knight versus Logan Paul for a title, the United States Championship.
Yeah.
You said, LA does deserve one of these championships. So, it's not a main event, unfortunately, but all of them are main events. Let's be honest with that. But, I think that could be money right there, and they can build it from this elimination chamber. They eliminate each other, one of them causes something. It could be fun there.
Caboose 8605 joins in on this conversation on Twitch. He says, we all know Becky wins the chamber because WWE is getting predictable again. Also chimes in, Drew McIntyre wins because of being obvious, as well as LA Knight versus Logan Paul for US belt at Mania. He throws in, get out of my head, sir. But to your point, Caboose, I think a lot of this it does feel, as you get toward WrestleMania, you're a step away. A lot of it, is pretty well put into a corner of where they're headed into WrestleMania. So you feel like a lot of this stuff, it's going to be at 4 a.m. So maybe we'll miss it. But a lot of it seems kind of predictable going into this match. In fact, I mean, I'd be surprised if we didn't pick every one of those because it's hard to imagine them really going another way, but we'll see.
Yeah. And, we got to think of it as they got to do what's best for business, what's best for the money wise. And just real quick, I want to say this, Randy Orton, if we're wondering what he might do, John Cena, you never know, they're both healthy for WrestleMania, for the first time in years. I don't even care what their feud would be about, but I think that'd be a fun way to do it. But to get back on topic there, they got to be a little bit predictable going into WrestleMania. But the fun part is once you get to WrestleMania, they can do, you never know what's going to happen, because then it's the restart of everything. It's either the restart or the continuation of a Roman Reigns domination. And that's the fun part of it all.
Interesting. Caboose also says, I see a double turn at Mania. Rock turns on Roman, Seth turns on Cody.
Oh, yeah. They're playing that Seth Rollins babyface really well. Wow. That would be the Shield. He called it. Dean Ambrose comes back.
Oh man,
on that that main event, you got the actual Shield, against. Oh my God, Caboose, you're onto something, man. You're have them WWE writers give you a call. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways for this to break down. A lot of ways for us to have fun as fans, and I think we're in for a treat one way or the other once WrestleMania comes along. Once again, April 6th and April 7th will be WrestleMania. Elimination Chamber from Perth will be this Saturday. You got to wake up early if you're in our time zone, in the Midwest time zone, to watch it. But hopefully you enjoy that. We'll be back next week. We'll try to let you know if we were able to get a live spot, if we'll do it pre-recorded. But once again, if you're a wrestling fan, you enjoy our show, please stick with us. I mean, we're gonna continue to post these every week on YouTube. So we'd like you to join us. But that'll wrap it up for Nuclear Heat, our WWE Week in Review. Once again, next week we will review what happened at Elimination Chamber, as well as the Raw that will be following that, and a little bit of SmackDown. But by then, usually after a premium live event, the SmackDown kind of gets forgotten about. But once again, Braun Breaker debuting. There'll be a little bit to talk about with that as well. Thanks once again. I'm Jake Bakoven, your host of Nuclear Heat. Thanks to my contributor over here, Augie Pena. We'll be back next week. We've got more Ticket Weeknights coming up for you here on 93.7 The Ticket.
Sandhills Global is hiring. With their fast-paced, growing culture, they have hundreds of new openings in sales, marketing, traveling support, software development, web